Hard times for soft drinks, the sweetened beverage tax is out.
Money and politics, the Illinois gubernatorial race gets expensive.
And open to regulation, there's a bipartisan gun control proposal that the NRA doesn't hate.
And protesting the flag, the vice president makes a bold move at an NFL game.
Those stories and more tonight on Politicat.
It's your political news
right now. Good evening and welcome to Politicat. I'm Tyler Kendall.
And I'm Andrew Merica. Tonight we'll talk Illinois politics, gun control, and NFL protests. But first, this week's headlines.
Scott Pruitt, the head of the Environmental Protection Agency, announced yesterday that the Trump administration will begin to repeal the Clean Power Plan. At an event in Kentucky, Pruitt said the Obama administration overstepped its bounds in creating the regulation, which intends to curb CO2 emissions. Rolling back the Clean Power Plan will make it difficult for the United States to meet the standards of the Paris Agreement for lowering emissions. President Trump has publicly stated he wants to leave the accord altogether.
The Justice Department yesterday took two actions that have those on the left up in arms. The first is a brief that argues the president is not subject to judicial oversight when destroying records, recordings, or even tweets. The other is an order handed down by Attorney General Jeff Sessions directing agencies to pay more attention to people's claims of religious freedom, effectively allowing employers and organizations to fire LGBT people as long as they claim employing them violates their religious beliefs.
Tennessee Senator Bob Corker took to Twitter Sunday to fire back at President Trump, who claimed also on Twitter that Corker had begged for his endorsement and to be named Secretary of State. Corker tweeted in response that the White House had become a, quote, adult daycare center and that someone had, quote, missed their shift. The president was apparently responding to an interview Corker did with the New York Times, which he said that Trump's rhetoric could lead to World War III.
Cook County commissioners voted today to repeal the controversial sweetened beverage tax. Commissioner Sean Morrison announced Friday he and 11 other commissioners had reached a deal to repeal the tax by December 1st. That announcement came a day after Commissioner John Daly switched sides on the issue, and 3 others followed suit supporting its repeal. Commissioners against the tax cite declines in sales throughout the county as consumers purchase less or travel elsewhere to quench their thirst. Supporters of the tax argue that the county needs money, and discouraging people from buying sugary drinks is a public health service. The commission has about 7 weeks to fill the $200 million gap in the budget left by the repeal. Politicat's Caitlin Boudreau talked to Evanston businesses about the repeal.
When Olive Mountain owner Hasib Blan learned Cook County's sweetened beverage tax would be repealed, he was overjoyed.
I'm really happy, but I can't wait.
Blan chose not to raise prices when the tax was implemented for fear of losing customers. Caught between a rock and a hard place, he felt the tax was unfairly burdensome to small restaurant owners like himself.
We feel that it's costing us too much.
And it's not just owners feeling the pinch.
I'm a server, so I make my tip based on how much the customer spends. Even the fountain drinks are just like $2, and I mean, it doesn't seem like a lot, but it definitely makes a difference.
While some are jumping for joy, for others here at Boltwood, the repeal is not so sweet.
People really didn't order sodas here before because it's kind of like a healthy restaurant, so there wasn't really that much of a change.
With not much at stake, Boltwood server Charlotte Foucault supports the healthy lifestyle the tax promotes.
I don't think they should repeal it. I think soda's really bad for you. I think sugary beverages are really bad for you. I think it should be harder to get them.
For better or for worse, servers throughout Evanston say soda sales have fizzled since the tax was added.
I've noticed more and more people starting to just ask for water.
A healthy lifestyle embraced by some, but an empty wallet feared by others.
And Caitlin joins us now to talk about the soda tax. So Caitlin, what does this repeal mean for the Cook County budget?
Well, Andrew, we're not sure. In her budget address Thursday, Cook County Board President Tony Preckwinkle warned the commissioners that the repeal could mean 11% cuts across the board, and for items like healthcare and public safety, which comprise the majority of the county budget, 11% would be substantial. But the general consensus is that Preckwinkle's suggestion is a worst-case scenario, and the board should be able to make up that revenue without closing healthcare facilities like Preckwinkle suggested. Still, a lot of uncertainty at the moment, though, Andrew.
All right, so why was this tax so controversial in the first place?
Well, frankly, the people here are feeling overtaxed, and it seems this tax in particular was held up as an example of just that. The tax is levied on soda manufacturers, so retailers pay more when purchasing soda, and it's up to them to decide how to cover those extra costs. Many consumers reported being charged more for unsweetened beverages when the tax was supposedly designed to discourage sugar consumption to fight obesity. That made people angry. Is the county taxing soda for public health or because they just want more money? And of course, there were wealthy stakeholders involved who exasperated the clash. Big Soda poured all kinds of money into local advertising, as did health organizations like the American Heart Association. Even Michael Bloomberg, the former mayor of New York, who tried the same tax in his city years ago, sponsored ads in favor of the tax.
All right, great report, Caitlin. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
7 candidates for the Democratic ticket for Illinois governor faced off at a forum Sunday hosted by the Chicago Teachers Union. The forum, sponsored by more than 50 progressive organizations, both local and national, pitted the hopefuls against each other on a number of issues. Speaking at the panel was State Senator Daniel Biss, School Superintendent Bob Dibur, activists Tio Hardiman, Chris Kennedy, Alex Paterakis, Alderman Amay Pawar, and billionaire and NU alum J.B. Pritzker. The topics of discussion ranged from health care to minimum wage to Mike Madigan, the longtime Democratic Speaker of the State House, who is seen by some to be causing much of the gridlock facing Illinois today. The Democrats, of course, facing off next year against incumbent Governor Bruce Rauner. This race is already on track to be the most expensive statewide election in U.S. history. Candidates on all sides have already raised at least $90 million, and the race is still just over a year away. Also at stake is redistricting the 5th most populous state in the country. Republicans now hold 7 of Illinois' 18 congressional seats. Without the governorship, Republicans would be hard-pressed to hold on to those. For analysis, now we turn to NNN's financial correspondent, Matt Sedun. Matt, thanks for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me. And before we actually begin, I should mention that I worked on the 2014 Illinois Bruce Rauner gubernatorial campaign.
Great.
Just for the record.
We'll definitely keep that in mind. So first off, who is funding this costly race?
Well, Tyler, 2 men are largely responsible. Pritzker, one of the richest men in the world, is funding his own campaign. And multimillionaire Governor Rauner is also a self-funder, for the most part with some support from billionaire Ken Griffin, who is also among the wealthiest men in the world. Rauner started his re-election campaign with an eye-popping $50 million personal contribution, and that was back in December. Soon after, Griffin cut Rauner a check for $20 million, the single largest campaign contribution in Illinois history. That brings Rauner's total to a whopping $70 million. Pritzker launched his campaign with a $15 million contribution to himself and has vowed to spend whatever he needs to win that seat. Now, Pritzker's entry is expected to drive up spending enormously. Illinois is by and large a blue state when we factor in Chicago, and for many Republicans, the way to beat Democrats here is simply to outspend them. But how do you outspend a billionaire opponent? We don't really know. Records aside, we have an expensive race shaping up for sure.
And do you think spending really will be the deciding factor here?
Absolutely, Tyler. Now, studies have shown, actually, that more money makes a notable difference in tight races. And with so much at stake, this race is sure to be a close one. Now, generally, more money buys more exposure. Think TV ads, billboards, radio spots. Now, when a candidate gets more exposure, people become familiar with their name, face, and ideas. Nobody votes for someone they've never heard of as a candidate. You've got to get your name out there. And so the BIS campaign is all about winning votes with ideology, not buying influence with donors. Playing off citizens' distrust of corporate or corrupt politicians in Illinois. And so only time will tell if this will be an effective strategy, ultimately.
All right. Well, thank you, Matt. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
There'll be more Politicat right after this.
At Northwestern, we're Wildcats in every way.
will cheer you all the go. Go you Northwestern, fight for victory, sweet victory, for the fame of our fair name, and go Northwestern, win that game. Go Cats!
At Northwestern University, we are pioneering innovation and achieving excellence across every imaginable discipline. At Northwestern University, the possibilities are endless.
A gunman opened fire on a country music festival from a Las Vegas hotel room 9 days ago tonight. At least 58 people died and more than hundreds were injured.
Almost immediately, congressional leaders on the left called for gun control. But as the week played out, something surprising happened. Republican leaders and the NRA joined in as well. Thursday, Republican Congressman Carlos Curbelo joined Democrat Seth Moulton in a bipartisan effort to ban bump-fire stocks.
Bump-fire stocks are gun modifications that the Las Vegas shooter used that allow a semi-automatic weapon to fire like an automatic one. Republicans are open but cautious, and Democrats, hungry for any legislation, see this as a step forward. YouTube banned videos showcasing the modification from their website.
The NRA Sunday announced it would be open to regulation but opposed any kind of ban. Even Steve Scalise, the GOP congressman and majority whip who was shot at a congressional baseball game in June, told NBC's Chuck Todd that he opposed any new legislation affecting gun ownership. To discuss this, we're going to bring in tonight's panel. We've got Elise Nazaire, co-host of Your World with WNUR News, and Edmund Bannister of NU Political Union. Guys, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
All right, so first off, does anybody think that this has a chance? The first bipartisan gun control following the deadliest mass shooting in modern American history. Let's start with you.
I definitely think it has a chance, but only because the legislation is so limited. We're talking about a single accessory to automatic weapons that's really just a loophole that should be closed in order to enforce a law that already exists. Most civilians aren't allowed to possess automatic weapons as it is. The bump stock essentially turns a semi-automatic weapon into an automatic weapon. This is common sense legislation, and the Republicans need to do something to show that they're not completely blind to this issue.
Lacey, you think they will?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It sounds like a good thing. However, I don't think it's enough, right? And I think Edmund just reiterated that as well.
So is this going to satisfy the Democrats, though? Because Democrats have been pushing for a very long time for much stronger gun control, and this is just a very tiny modification to gun control. Edmund?
Well, as a Democrat, I hope it doesn't satisfy the Democrats. I think that we need to be doing more to control this problem. We have thousands of people dying every single year in the United States because of gun violence, more than any country on earth, and that's on a net basis, that's also on a per capita basis. We clearly have a problem, and we need to think about large-scale solutions to fix it.
Lisa?
Honestly, I think Democrats will take anything at this point. I mean, after Sandy Hook, basically nothing happened, and we just sat around thinking that it would get better, and it didn't. So I think they'll just take anything that they can get.
Right, so let's say that this doesn't pass. Does this open the door for more legislation in the future? Are more discussions going to be had?
I'm really pessimistic. I don't believe so. I really, really don't. I don't think until something even bigger than this occurs, until that happens, I don't think change will occur in legislation.
Evan, are you also pessimistic?
I'm also pessimistic. I think that almost every single year we have an incident like this, and almost every single year almost nothing is done. What we really need to do is we need to build up a grassroots movement that advocates for gun control in the same way that the NRA is largely a grassroots movement advocating for gun ownership. We need more people on the ground getting this issue out to voters in their real lives rather than just talking about it on media outlets.
But still, I mean, this legislation, you said nothing happens, but I mean, this is something, right? So you don't think that this even, I mean, the NRA is bending a little bit for this, right? You don't think that this could butter them up for later?
I really don't think so. I mean, I'd like to think that it's the first sort of snowflake in a snowball, but I really don't think it's going to happen. This is a very incremental change. It's not very significant at all.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you both. When we come back, a political stunt involving a leader in the executive branch, but not the one you might think. Stay with us.
At Northwestern, we're Wildcats in every way.
Go Northwestern, break right through that. With our colors flying, we will cheer you all the go. Go you Northwestern, fight for victory, sweet victory, for the fame of our fair name, and go Northwestern, win that game. Go Cats!
Vice President Mike Pence walked out of an Indianapolis Colts game Sunday after 20 players kneeled during the national anthem. For more than a year now, several in the NFL have opted not to stand during the national anthem as an act of protest against police brutality.
However, many on the right, including the Trump administration, say that the act of kneeling during the anthem insults, among other things, the sacrifices that the members of the military have made. Is this civil disobedience for a worthy cause or disrespecting symbols of the country? Elisa, what do you think?
Wow, loaded question. I think my answer, it's number one. I mean, it's our right to protest. Like, what exactly is so wrong about that, you know? In fact, I'd say that by kneeling, we're showing even more respect to our country. You know, we love our country, and we would want our country to be better and to get better. And so by kneeling during the national anthem, I see nothing wrong with that at all.
Evan?
Yeah, I think it's important to remember that the flag and the anthem, they're not just military symbols, they're national symbols. And whenever someone wants to take issue with something that's going on in the country, it's relatively commonplace to protest those symbols. Now, me personally, during a sports game, I get up, I take my hat off, I look towards the flag, I stand up during the anthem, but that's a personal choice I'm making, and people are absolutely free not to do that if they feel like they want to protest something or bring attention to a cause. I think that's what Colin Kaepernick tried to show, and that's what President Trump is objecting to. And quite frankly, I think that we should be on the side of the people willing to express their freedom of speech.
Right, and then on Sunday, President Trump quickly took to Twitter to claim responsibility for the incident. He tweeted, quote, "I asked VP Pence to leave stadium if any players kneeled, disrespecting our country."
Right, and additionally, the White House promptly sent out an official press release and an email fundraising for the administration based off of Pence's actions Sunday. So, do we think that this is an orchestrated political stunt? Is there any thought in anybody's mind that he did actually want to see his Indianapolis Colts?
Oh, this was absolutely a political stunt. He flies, you know, in the afternoon from Washington on a private jet, spending taxpayer money, hundreds of thousands of dollars, in fact, to go to a game in Indianapolis. He walks into the game, and he knows they're going to protest. NFL players have been kneeling at every single game, at every single stadium this entire year. That's been an obvious trend, and so he knew that they were going to be kneeling, and he knew he was going to be walking out. He premeditated this in order to make a political point, and he used taxpayer dollars to do it.
Elisa?
This was definitely a stunt. I'm just surprised that they thought it'd work. Like, they really thought that we'd be okay with this. Oh yeah, look at our vice president really, you know, standing up. No.
Well, so then, is this politically good for Trump? Is this a fight that, you know, he should back off of, or how do you think his supporters are taking this?
I wish I could understand them. I definitely don't, so I can't speak for them. Though I do think Trump doesn't know what he's doing at all. He's off the cuff. He's tweeting how he's feeling and what he wants, and that's basically how I see it.
How do you think it plays with the base?
I think it's going to play very well with Trump's base. A lot of Trump voters are people who think that the United States has been disrespected, both externally and externally. They want to see someone stand up for the national symbol in a very bombastic way. this is really sort of an element of internal culture wars that's very divisive. Of course, these people should be allowed to protest, but it's been turned into an issue about whether you do or do not support veterans, which it really shouldn't be. This is just an issue of do you or do you not have the right to kneel during a football game. But yeah, I think it's going to play very politically for Trump and Pence. His instinct has always been to appeal to his base, and it's worked out so far.
So what's the end game for all this? What do you think the administration is working towards?
Well, I think Donald Trump is working towards his re-election. His instinct is going to be to fire up his base again so he can go at it hard in the next election cycle. And I suspect that maybe Vice President Pence is planning the same thing.
You think?
I was going to say, where does this end? Do you think there's a sight and ending soon?
Honestly, I think we overestimate President Trump way too often. I don't honestly think he has an end goal in mind. I think he's just going with how he's feeling and how his base might feel currently.
I mean, this is a guy that, you know, tweets a lot and seems to have a command of optics. You really don't think that he's onto something here, even with his own base in terms of a re-election or anything like that?
Maybe in terms of a re-election, sure, but I don't honestly believe he actually has a problem with the protests. I think he's just appealing to the base.
Is there anything that NFL players might start doing differently, or is this just going to keep going on and on as it has?
I think what they should do is continue protesting and more of their teammates to join them as well.
Edmund, do you agree?
I think that quite honestly the only reason why the protests are at the scale that they are is because Donald Trump brought up the issue once again. See, originally this was just Colin Kaepernick kneeling, but because President Trump has brought up the issue of freedom of speech, you have hundreds of players, many of whom never thought about kneeling before, who are now kneeling. Quite frankly, it's President Trump that has stirred this hornet's nest, and he's stirred it in order to create a fight that will make him look good to his base.
I actually somewhat disagree with that. I definitely think that people were aware of Colin Kaepernick's actions, and while it might have started smaller, I definitely think it would have continued to grow as a flame, if that makes sense, right? Like, I definitely think, and we've seen as well, if you paid attention to some of the news, local news, high schoolers that were kneeling, high schoolers and middle schoolers that were, you know, doing these actions as well. It might not have been in the limelight on CNN or Fox, but it was definitely happening all at the same time. I think what Trump has done is brought it to the attention of people who wouldn't care before, or who avoided it before.
Do you think it makes them care more or less now?
The base, the people?
These new people that are maybe now more exposed to it, are they siding with the president, saying this is disrespectful, or are they understanding the NFL players kneeling?
I honestly think it's a great opportunity for them to learn more about where this originated from and why these people are protesting. Rather than just seeing it out of the corner of their eye or turning the channel, they have more of an opportunity and a chance to learn.
Okay. All right, well, that's going to do it for the discussion. A big thank you to our guests, Lisa and Edmund. Thank you both for joining us, and we'll have the final word right after this.
At Northwestern, we're Wildcats in every way.
Cheer you all to go. Go you Northwestern, fight for victory, sweet victory, for the fame of our fair name, and go Northwestern, win that game. Go Cats!
At Northwestern University, we are pioneering innovation and achieving excellence across every imaginable discipline. Northwestern University, the possibilities are endless.
Welcome back to Politicat, and now here's Tyler with tonight's final word.
Thanks, Andrew. The views expressed in this segment are not necessarily the views of NNN or Northwestern University. They are the views of the Politicat editorial staff. The press serves the vital function in our democracy of reporting on the government. The news media in this country has a responsibility to the American people to thoroughly and accurately report. In a society where it seems that each side of the aisle is becoming more and more polarized now, perhaps more than ever, it is essential for reporters to get it right. President Donald Trump is unlike any leader the United States has seen. Never before was there a candidate who threw more insults or bluntly made sweeping accusations during the election season. Never before has a president took to social media to express his opinions unfiltered. Never before have we seen this much scrutiny over his words. And that scrutiny is a good thing. There seems to be this ongoing, perhaps underlying debate in the media about what to cover and what not to cover in regards to President Trump's comments. At what point does a mean tweet deserve to be discussed on a newscast or in a newspaper over perhaps policy initiatives or national events? The public can only consume so much news, and the media has the power to choose what is at the top of the hour or on the front page. Reporting can't overlook the important, tangible events happening in our government. We can't simply let legislation and policy fall to the wayside. However, the president is perhaps the most important person in the world. Everything he says and everything he does needs to be reported on. Last week at a White House event with military leaders, President Trump alluded to a, quote, calm before the storm. When asked what he meant, the president responded, "You'll find out." With no further explanation by the president, politicians and pundits alike were left to make predictions about what he meant by the statement. Was it a threat to North Korea? Is there an impending military operation? Was he trying to distract from headlines that apparently Secretary of State Rex Tillerson called him a moron? There's a symbolic significance to the office of the president, and he is supposed to be the representative of all the ideals our nation holds dear. Our country is a leader on the global stage, and when the President of the United States speaks, the entire world listens. Does President Trump understand the power of his words? There can't be ambiguity, empty threats, or distracting rhetoric. We believe that the president needs to be held accountable no matter the topic, no matter the comment. So we will keep reporting on his Twitter accounts on every off-the-cuff remark. We will continue to ask questions when there's too much ambiguity. We will be relentless in combating the perception his office advances about fake news. If his administration won't provide scrutiny to his rhetoric, it is up to the media too. And this holds for right now and every president in the future. And that's the final word. Andrew?
Thanks, Tyler. And once again, we'd like to thank our guests, Elisa Nazaire from Your World with WNUR News and Edmund Bannister of Political Union for joining us tonight. And we'd like to thank you, the viewer. We'll be back next Tuesday with more Politicat. For all of us here at Politicat, I'm Andrew Merica. Have a wonderful night.